morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where we have some very interesting things to discuss because it was not particularly a busy weekend, but some big things happened. Two big things, and then the third story actually is something that I missed last week, which many of you were like, why are you talking about the Booster Gold movie? So today I wanted to do that. But I think the first thing we need to talk about, of course, is the extended Civil War trailer that Marvel played at Asia Pop in Manila over the weekend. We knew that was going to happen. Asia Pop was using that as the selling point, and it's yet another group of people who've seen this now after D23 besides the general public. As many people have said, this will likely debut with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season premiere, and that's probably when we'll all get a look at it. But we're getting a lot of descriptions because, well, Disney's doing a very good job of making sure that this actual trailer and footage don't go up online. They can't keep people from describing it. So we're going to go over some of the new revelations, and a new battle has been revealed, so I'll be making a new Versus episode probably toward the end of the week. So anyway, let's go through the reveals. Well, the first thing is that it appears that Black Widow is a double agent, surprise, surprise, but against Cap. I think that's probably a misdirect, but they have her reporting to General Ross and Tony Stark, which means that Tony Stark is teaming up with General Ross, and that's another reason for him to lose a friend because, of course, General Ross doesn't have a good relationship with Bruce Banner, so there go the science bros. But anyway, I am very proud of the fact that it seems that at least in the trailer, Hawkeye gets in some winning blows and, you know, really is able to injure Black Widow because that's what I called. I called that Hawkeye would win that fight, and it seems that I'm correct. Now, another funny gag that came out of the trailer, and I'm very happy about it, is that Ant-Man does a nod to Peggy Carter in the first Captain America movie, where he touches one of Cap's pecs to see just how real it is. I thought that was very clever. That's classic Paul Rudd, and I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Rudd improvised that, because the Russo brothers come from a comedic background, and on television before they got so serious with Marvel, and it will be very interesting to see how they handle working with a comedic character like Ant-Man, who really does fit with the projects they worked on before they came to Marvel. So I think that's interesting to see that added to the film. And I hope they didn't give away Ant-Man's best joke, but then again, I guess they want to make sure people go to the theater. And on a side note, Ant-Man continues to do very, very well at the box office. It just passed $400 million worldwide. That puts it ahead of Mad Max Fury Road, and it still has yet to open in China. So I think that's incredibly exciting. Kudos. It couldn't have happened to a nicer group of people, and I think at the end of the day, Edgar Wright's the big loser there because Marvel walked away with the win. They didn't need him. They took a lot of his ideas and did them without him, and I think that you'll certainly, probably most likely be seeing Ant-Man 2, and not on Netflix. So very exciting, although I don't know where it's going to fit because their schedule is so tight. But then the other thing that was revealed in this Asia Pop trailer was a Baron Zemo reveal. I wonder if he's got that purple sweater mask that he wears in the comics. I'm like, why would he wear that? It looks ridiculous. So, and I'd be like, don't cover up Daniel Bruhl's face. It's bad enough you're making him play a Nazi. But we'll see how that works out. But apparently he does show up in the footage. And then also, this is the biggest thing that I thought was very interesting that was revealed in this extended trailer. And, you know, when that concept art came out and we saw the two, supposed teams for Captain America and Iron Man, a lot of us commented on how Iron Man's team way outpowered Captain America's, right? We were all like, that's ridiculous, that's not a fair fight. And it seems that Cap and Marvel know it because two of the fights that were showcased in this Asia Pop trailer were when Cap's team had to double team a member of Iron Man's team. You had Vision fighting both Scarlet Witch and Falcon. I'm not quite sure what Falcon can add to that fight, but, I'm going to think about it for my episode later this week. But then also, I thought the most interesting was that they had Captain America having to team up with Bucky, the Winter Soldier, to take on Iron Man. Now, I know that Bucky and Cap are best pals, and their bromance is going to be a big part of Civil War. But still, I think it kind of degrades Captain America that he can't take on Iron Man by himself. Now, I called in my Versus episode between the two of them, thinking it was just, we'll see if, if they do have their own fight mano-y-mano, but I thought Iron Man would win. Even if he lost, I felt that he would win, in the larger sense of things. But I think that clearly Marvel must agree with me because they want to even the playing field by putting in the Winter Soldier. But I think that, again, I think that's not such a great thing to do to Captain America, and in the comics, Cap don't need no help against Iron Man, right? And I just think that it, I don't know, maybe they're like, well, you know what, Iron Man, you're going to have to lose this fight, Robert Downey Jr., but it's going to take 2 guys to bring you down. And he's like, okay, I'm all right with that. And it's like, well, what about Chris Evans? Chris Evans would be, I guess Chris Evans is like, I'm just so happy to be a part of the MCU. I was thinking of giving up acting just a few years ago because it was going so poorly, but now I'm a movie star thanks to Marvel. So I guess he's become quite the good team player. Although I wonder if he's voicing his toys still, because when the first Captain America movie came out, I was at Marvel and I heard through the grapevine that he wouldn't do the voice for the toys because he wanted more money, so he had his brother do it, or actually, I think he proposed his brother would do it, but then somebody at the company ended up doing it instead. But anyway, I'm curious, what do you think of the reveals for Civil War with this new footage? How does it sound to you? What do you think of Captain America needing help to take down Iron Man? All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day, because the third is, not so much about movies. So let's focus on the Booster Gold story. And that's that Greg Berlanti is developing with the hopes to direct a Booster Gold Blue Beetle comedic buddy movie, superhero movie. And the reason he's doing this is because the DC CW shows that he works on are so incredibly successful. So it looks like this is going to be his reward, that he will actually get to make a movie. And of course, Jeff Johns is heavily involved in these TV shows as well, and he's going to be helping script Ben Affleck's Batman movie. Now, I really like the Jeff Johns idea because I think what he's done with Batman Earth 1 has been brilliant, the first 2 volumes, and if you haven't read those, again, pick them up. But Greg Berlanti has had success here, but he's also had some real flops, and he was also heavily involved in the Green Lantern movie. So I think that Greg Berlanti is somebody who perhaps works best on the small screen. Although I have to say, I have not been a fan of the CW DC shows. I know they have their fans, but I'm just I just don't particularly enjoy them. And I think the people who said bad things about Birds of Prey, it's like, this seems very similar to me, so I don't know why everyone trashed Birds of Prey, which I thought was, watchable, but then is like, the Arrow is the best thing ever made. But I know that many of you like it, so I have a lot of respect for that. But when I see the promos for Legends of Tomorrow, I'm pretty darn impressed. And that's someone, again, who does not like the CW shows to date. So I think that they're really upping their game, and they're obviously learning a lot while they up their game, and it allows them to do even better. So I think Legends of Tomorrow is going to be an amazing hit for the CW and Warner Brothers TV in general. And so I can understand giving Greg Berlanti a movie, but I hope they're watching him incredibly closely. Although I do wonder, wouldn't Booster Gold's buddy cop partner be Skeets? I don't know, his little robot that follows him around. I don't know why you would team up Blue Beetle with Booster Gold. And also, Booster Gold's from the future? I don't know. I think there are probably some comics where I've never been a Booster Gold fan, I have to tell you. And I think one of the interesting things is that DC has really, I think, targeted a specific kind of character to put on the small screen. And they almost always, without fail, choose characters that I've never liked in the comics. So maybe that's partially why I don't like the shows, but I like Birds of Prey because I like the characters in the comics. I think maybe that's a big part of it. But there's different sections of comic book fandom, and some people belong to multiple ones, but I think very few people belong to all section. So it's interesting, very interesting. But I've never particularly liked Booster Gold, and I've never particularly liked Blue Beetle, and I wonder if there are enough Booster Gold and Blue Beetle fans to propel a film, right? You need much different numbers for a movie than you do for a TV show. I would even maybe say you should do a Legends of Tomorrow movie if the show is that hot, just like they take HBO TV shows to the big screen. Why not take some, CW shows and make a movie? Why not consider doing that? All right, so that's the second story of the day. I'm curious, do you have faith in Greg Berlanti to go back to the silver screen after, basically being laughed off of it with Green Lantern? And are you excited for Legends of Tomorrow? Maybe I'll even watch Legends of Tomorrow, but I feel like I'd be hopelessly lost because I haven't been watching the other shows. All right, but anyway, let's go to the third story of the day, which are the Emmys from last night. A lot of really big developments and a lot of things were actually shaken up, and it was pretty interesting. I actually didn't watch the Emmys because I'm not an Andy Samberg fan, and interestingly enough, Seth Meyers hosted last year because Lorne Michaels apparently controls everything that happens at NBC. But I thought that Seth Meyers was one of the best hosts I ever saw, and he never got any credit for it. He had one of the best. If you go watch the monologue from last year's Emmys, it's one of the best opening monologues I've ever seen, and Seth Meyers got absolutely no credit for it. I don't know what it is about him, but I watched for Seth Meyers, didn't watch for Andy Samberg. But here's what happened, because a lot of headlines this morning coming out of this. Well, John Hamm finally won an Emmy for Mad Men because it was his last chance, and Viola Davis won for How to Get Away with Murder, which is really great, and I think that's really going to help her going into Suicide Squad and give her some, a little bit more legitimacy. Viola Davis is always that actress. I mean, she's been Oscar nominated before, more than once actually, but Viola Davis is always that actress who doesn't get the recognition she deserves, right? Like, that's been her narrative, right? Like, Viola Davis is brilliant, but nobody gives her any credit for it. So I'm really interested to see if she eventually, is able to evolve out of that and get the credit she deserves. And that's largely thanks to Shonda Rhimes, I think, for propelling her to the next level of fandom with this show. And then, of course, Suicide Squad. And that's going to be a 1-2 punch, perhaps, for Viola Davis in the next couple of months that really puts her on the map. Then also, interestingly, Veep was the big winner last night in the comedy areas, not only for Best Comedy Series, but also in the acting categories. And it really, really took a lot of the awards that usually go to Modern Family. Like, Modern Family wins every year. But I'm really glad that Veep took, although it's interesting, I think this was the weakest season of Veep. And I really had a lot of problems with how Selena Meyer. I always think Selena Kyle when I hear the name Selena. But Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, Selena Meyer, I felt was her most incompetent yet, like to the point of like it was not funny anymore. It was like too hard to buy that she would be in any seat of power. I think that you want to be able to root for a character, right? And it's okay to have them occasionally fail or to fail because their team is inept, but her team fails so much that you're like, how are you still in the game? But anyway, they're still very much in the awards game, and they took home most of the awards last night. But I think I'm really happy, though. I'm more happy for the Modern Family losing because I think Modern Family's become very lazy in its writing. I think that it's, there was a really interesting editorial in The Hollywood Reporter from Gavin Polone late last week about TV and how the explosion on the small screen of shows has not so much created more fabulous television, but actually like more problems for TV. Because Gavin Polone, and I wonder if this is correct, but I thought his theory was pretty sound. He said that you only have so many good writers, right? So since there's so much demand for their talent, you have either a show doesn't land any good writers, and then you just have like crap going on the air that has like really good ad marketing for it, but it can't deliver. Or they're hired away from a show after its first season. So he said you see a considerable drop in quality as shows progress. And maybe that's what happened also with Veep. Because, I really loved seasons 1 and 2, but I thought the last one was really weak. And Modern Family probably lost a bunch of writers. If you see a change in the quality of a show, it's often because they've lost writers to other content, other opportunities. So I think that's fascinating, and I'm glad that someone finally called Modern Family on their dip in quality. But anyway, the big headline was that Game of Thrones has won the most Emmys ever for a show in a single awards showing for a year. The previous record holder was The West Wing with 9 Emmys, and last night Game of Thrones, at the end of the day, walked away with a total of 12. 8 of those were from the Creative Arts Emmys last week. But last night it won, like Peter Dinklage won for his role, as Tyrion Lannister, obviously quite deserving, but it also won Best Series, a drama series, it won Writing for Drama. Really, really impressive. Fantastic show, obviously deserves it, but to get that kind of recognition, I think propels the idea that we'll get a Game of Thrones movie, and it's really becoming not only a fan favorite, but I think an industry favorite finally as well. Also, I think Game of Thrones has becomes more popular and also hasn't had a dip in quality because it's able, even though it's lost a lot of directors to movies, it's been able, its showrunners, D.B. Weiss and David Benioff are of course also writers on it, and I think that's one of the reasons the quality has stayed so strong, and they haven't gone to do other projects. They stick pretty much exclusively to Game of Thrones. But Game of Thrones, what I thought was really interesting is it was like a really strong example for why people shouldn't do, bulk watching, streaming, because they said that, when Cersei, for instance, takes her walk of shame, everybody was watching at the same time on Sunday night because the episode airs weekly. And they said that that's better than, doing binge watching because people watch at their own pace and nobody's at the same place at the same time. And I thought that was a really great argument that was made for that. I think it was the New York Times that actually made that. And I was really, really impressed. And I think so Game of Thrones, I think not only is something that's pioneering new ground, but also I think championing the old school way of TV a little bit as well. But it couldn't have happened to a better show. Totally deserves it. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. And I have a viewer question, which plays into some tweets that I got over the weekend and one that I actually retweeted. And this is from Nader Snorkelbox. And Nader, that's a great YouTube handle, by the way. Let me bring up the person who tweeted me. I want to give them credit. Hold on, sorry. I should have done this beforehand. Sometimes I do things... I usually prep everything I want to talk about first, but I really want to cover this. Okay, so on Saturday, Solaris tweeted me and said, pulling my weight. He said, pulling my weight to get Fury Road where it needs to be. And he had this great photo of all the movie tickets he'd gone to see. Let's see, I think maybe he went with other people because he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 times that he saw the movie, and he bought the Blu-ray and he bought the DVD set. So really, really impressive there. And this time, and also some other people in response, because I retweeted that, sent in pictures of what they had purchased for Mad Max Fury Road as well. Just really trying to help it out. And so Nader Snorkelbox says, viewer question, and this is actually from Thursday, and said, do DVD Blu-ray sales factor into a movie's chances of getting a sequel like for Mad Max? Because I think everyone's like, where is the Mad Max sequel announcement? And I think it's because I think you're not going to hear it until after at least award nominations, or probably maybe even the Oscars themselves. I think that Mad Max has a real shot at being nominated, and I think if it's nominated in picture and director, or even if it gets one of those, but it really deserves to at least be nominated in both categories, I think at that point you'll probably see a sequel greenlit. But anyway, as for whether or not Blu-ray and DVD sales factor in, 100% they do. They're really important. They're not quite as important, and obviously don't get studios as excited as the actual theatrical box office, but they show a growing audience for something. And so maybe people weren't willing to discover it when it first came out, but after seeing it on DVD and Blu-ray, it gives the studio faith that if they make another movie, the audience will be bigger, right? That's why that's why box office is supposed to go up with the sequel, because more people are fans at that point. They're supposed to be. So it's okay, Avengers, Avengers 2 was supposed to open bigger than Avengers 1. It didn't, so that's problematic. But the reason it's supposed to open bigger is that more people are aware that it's a good property, because maybe only hardcore fans went the first weekend last time, or people who are really into comic book movies, but at that point you're supposed to have more people being okay, I love these movies, even though I saw Avengers 1 second or third week, I liked it so much I'm going to go first weekend for the sequel. And that's what's supposed to happen. And I think the best example of this is Austin Powers. The first Austin Powers was not a particularly strong box office performer. I think it made $55 million overall or something like that, total run when it was first released. But this thing was such a strong performer, not only on, at that time, DVD sales, but also, ratings and being played so often on TV. For instance, one of the reasons they wanted to make a Mrs. Doubtfire sequel, I don't believe they can after Robin Williams tragically took his own life, and the circumstances for that are muddled, but tragic no matter what the reason is. There's some feeling that the medication he was on might have, given him suicidal tendencies, and that's just really tragic and a really important conversation that needs to be had. But anyway, Mrs. Doubtfire does amazing play on television. It's still one of the most watched movies today. So they do pay attention to ratings when these movies are replayed, and also Blu-ray and DVD sales. And Austin Powers did so well that the audience, the studio was able to see that there was such a bigger demographic that was audience that was interested in Austin Powers, that when the sequel came out, it had a huge opening weekend. Huge, and it became obviously a gigantic franchise because so many more people were on board with Austin Powers at that point. So definitely, if you want to see a movie do well, if you want to see a sequel, you know, it is worth buying that DVD or Blu-ray, or, you know, even purchasing on iTunes. That would also be noticed. You know, they want it. They're very aware of, you know, the money that they're making. Like Hollywood maybe doesn't pay attention to the screenplay, and maybe they don't pay attention to the message boards, but they pay attention to the dollar amounts that are coming in. And also where they're coming from. And they take all revenue streams into account, obviously, because money is money. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for your question, Nader Snorkelbox. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.